Okay guys, for the next step is processing. As I just said, we balanced, we tuned, super important. That is my first step and I recommend you guys start there. Now you guys can see, obviously we have a really dry stem. That's the best part. When you get your vocal stems and your vocals, try to get the dry and wet. If they're a great processing vocalist and they have an engineer that you guys can really trust, sure, definitely get the wet take so you always can have that option. But 100% of the time, you need the dry take. You have to have control as the producer to have that dry stem. So that's what we started with there with the tuning and balancing. So again, make sure you grab that. But now let's move on to processing and how can we basically, what I call, take the vocalist out of the shell, kind of bring her to life. Because dry vocals, we really want them to sit poppy in the mix, as I said earlier, but we really need to glue them into the mix. So let's first start with what I usually my go-to on processing at the top of the chain. There's this JJP plugin that I always use as a processor. It's in a nutshell going to put her through this hardware unit. Now obviously it's not hardware, but it's emulating hardware that's going to really bring every bit of tone and emotion and everything out of the vocal. It's going to bring it to life with these few certain parameters. Now as you guys can see, you have female, male, and male. Kind of mess around with what you think is best for you. You can see how the parameters mess around, but I always just start with the basic and I bring everything down and I can start to dial it back in, bring everything up to find what the vocal needs. You know, essentially it needs, you know, a little more presence or distortion or a little more crunch. So I'm going to play it back and forth and I basically find that sweet spot of bringing this to life.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you, I need you, nobody else. I can't.
While you guys are doing this, side note, watch your sensitivity. If that's cranking up in the red, you know you're kind of pushing the vocal too far. That means all these parameters are a little too hot. So you can always back off just a little bit so we're not getting too much volume outtake, but we're getting more processing. You know what I mean? So you want to push that processing and back off the dB a little bit so you're kind of balancing it out. You don't want to get that vocalist too hot because once we start bussing and doing a little more stuff and actually layering, your vocal will almost be a little bit too overdone. You know, your instrumental will be too hidden. So you got to find that balance in that sweet spot.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you, I need you, nobody.
So that's sounding great already. Good rule of thumb, you guys can see as if it was a compressor or any other unit. I'm not trying to push it past that 6 mark here. You know, that's gonna really overdrive the vocal. You can see we're kind of right around there.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you, I need you, nobody else.
So we're really bringing her out. Now, as I do that, I'm going to back off in the mixer. I'm going to bring her down a little bit because I've gained so much perceived output due to that little bit of processing. So now I can balance it back down mixing wise.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you, I need you, nobody else.
All right, so that's step one. And let me bypass that.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you, I need.
Right, we're getting that little bit of warmth that we want, you know, that overall analog warmth to the vocalist, which is so important with vocals. So make sure you guys are doing that. Speaking of warmth, I'm also going to go to UAD. If you guys aren't UAD users, don't sweat. The Waves has the exact same or pretty much the same plugin to the Pultec. I use all the time on my vocals. I like putting it through this. Sometimes I honestly don't even touch the parameters just because of how this is emulated after the hardware. It gives it instant warmth to the vocal.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you, I need you, nobody.
Just listen to the high end.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you.
See that kind of 2% difference we just gave? Now that's going to pay off once we start bussing and sending and giving a little bit of reverb and delay and post-production compression and all that good stuff. Those highs are going to be nice and clean, but not overdone because now we're going to step into our next processing tip of EQing and finding certain frequencies that do not fit. You guys might be getting vocalists, again, that are working on different microphones or in different rooms and all that stuff, and you could kind of find frequencies within the vocal that kind of are harmful to the track. So make sure you guys are really taking your time on the equalizing kind of stage of the vocal. It's just as important as everything else.
I can't keep lying to myself.
And let me just solo this out. We want to kind of go back and forth and find anything that doesn't really make sense.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you.
It's a little bit too much on the mid-range.
I can't keep lying.
It's got a tiny bit of high end. We could bring that down a little bit.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you.
Now, it's best, guys, too, if you have a really solid pair of headphones, this is a really good time to throw those on, because you might not hear certain frequencies and resonance in your studio room, in your home room. Sometimes you just don't hear those reflections and resonance. So this is really where you want to get down to the detail work of possibly putting on a really good set of headphones, because you can really just kind of hear that clear frequencies that are just not making sense.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you. I need you. Nobody else.
It's always cool to keep in mind, guys, cutting the low end, you know, just as if a synth bass, you know, you guys know all about that. Same thing with your vocal. Once we get into our harmonizing or our layering, you got to keep the same rule of thumb with vocal layering as you do with synth layering or bass. It's the same idea. You got to give room and space to any of your low end elements or any of your higher end elements, etc. It's the same exact idea. But for a vocalist, that 200 range up to 500 range can be really important as far as getting warmth and body out of the vocal. If you cut those too far, sometimes you can eliminate pretty much the entire performance of the vocal. So be careful in this zone frequencies that you really need to kind of give a little bit more warmth to the vocalist and not really cut it too far.
I can't keep lying to.
Next thing I do is I throw it through iZotope's Neutron. If you guys are new to this one also, super kind of clean plugin that gives you an extra step of maybe a few frequencies you may be missing, and it has a track assistant. It's going to kind of bring it in like as such Melodyne just did earlier. It's the same idea. Now we can run it through and it will change all the parameters and try to balance it to where this plugin thinks it should be.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you. I need you. Nobody else.
All right, so it just went off there a little bit, but now you guys can see it open up an exciter, 2 compressors, and the equalizer is really what I pay attention to. It's kind of doing a multi-band dynamic mode, and it's trying to kind of get these out on certain frequencies.
I can't keep lying to myself.
You can see when she sings stuff a little harder or louder, the Neutron is going to try to fight those frequencies down. It's going to balance it just as multi-band would do, right? It's taking those frequencies and almost compressing them down, because you guys can see we have the compress option on. So basically, those louder spots of the vocal are going to be compressed and balanced overall.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you. I need you.
And if you click on each function here, you can kind of make it more dramatic with the threshold. It'll really kind of push it down.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you.
I kind of like being in the mid-range here where they have it. You don't want to overdo it.
I can't keep lying to myself.
So let's take those all off so far.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you. I need you. Nobody else.
That's an A to B, big version, you know, big difference to me. But let's go to our last step here. I'm going to put just a compressor on, a vintage compressor, just a standard Logic one that I'm kind of, everything I've just done is now just going to be tamed, is what you could say at the bottom end. It's just going to be balanced and kind of set for the bussing and sending.
I can't keep lying to myself. I don't want you.
I want a short release here because I don't want, you know, too much compression overlaying it, because it'll get rid of the dynamics.
I can't keep lying to
And
myself.
I'm really looking for 1 to 2 dB difference there on the tucking away or the compression. I'm not overdoing it.
I can't keep lying.
You guys can see the little bit of purple that's coming in here. That's our compression.
I can't keep lying to myself.
Really subtle. And you guys will notice compression that I'm going to be working with is super subtle. You can't overdo it. Let's get to the next step.